Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 14 2022 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic this past week, it was a bit of a down week. Unfortunately, hot streaks can't last forever. And everybody would like to keep the hot streaks going as long as they could. Hot streaks can't last forever, and definitely against the spread, I hit a lull. Definitely in terms of a lot of my picks. There were definitely some games that should have been more competitive and should have been more decisive, but I didn't get those breaks. That's okay. Such is life. I had the Ravens as 9.5-point favorites, and we ended up winning the game by scoring 10 points over a team that had 9. So, also Lamar Jackson going down with his knee injury, which is a mild knee sprain. He's considered week to week. So, if you would have told me that Lamar would have been out and Tyler Huntley would have played to play, that would have been big. Same thing with Pittsburgh, Atlanta. That was a weird 3-point game. We had our second tie of the season in the Commanders and Giants game, which you always hate ties. You always hate ties in football. You always hate ties in any sport, but you don't get really anything from a tie. And, when you watch the Commanders and Giants, both teams were playing fairly, okay. Saquon Barkley had a nice 13-yard touchdown. Isaiah Hodgins got his first career touchdown, which I was happy for him in that way. That was a good score. But then Taylor Heinicke came back with 2 good touchdowns. He also had the big fumble that gave the Giants the 7-point lead that they would hold on to for majority of the game. He's still only 6-1-1. He still only has 1 loss to his record so far. But yeah, it's one of those that, unfortunately, in a tie against the spread, I didn't win that one. The Commanders are 1.5-point favorites. Though I got a tie on my straight up picks, that's a win for the Giants at 0. So that's that's really sad. But let's move on from there. A couple of the other games, Chiefs Bengals, that could have been at least a tie game or at least a push if Travis Kelce didn't fumble the football. And by the way, that is now the 6th consecutive game this year that the Chiefs have had an offensive turnover. That is the most in the Andy Reid era. And I do want to congratulate Joe Burrow for outplaying Patrick Mahomes again and getting his 3rd consecutive victory against Patrick Mahomes. Fun fact, Patrick Mahomes in his career has never been able to beat Joe Burrow in a football game, which is incredibly impressive knowing that Patrick Mahomes beating basically everybody else known to man that he's played. And also Joe Burrow was the first person to do it 3 times consecutively. The only other quarterback that has 3 wins over Patrick Mahomes is Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. Tom Brady. But yeah, so that's how the against the spread luck went out. Also, I had the Colts-Cowboys game throughout 3 quarters. It was 21-19 Dallas, and then Dallas goes on to have their best quarter in franchise history and one of the best quarters since the merger, with 33 points scored in the 4th quarter. That was an avalanche, a rear-end kicking that I did not expect from the Cowboys to the Colts in that regard. But yeah, so that's how you go from a 9.5-point underdog play looking okay to a 33-point quarter, which puts it to like 53 to like 19. A 34-point win. So, yeah, what can you do? Alright, yeah, so that's how my against the spread record this week got to 5-9. And straight up, I went 9-4-1 with the tie. That equals a 35.7 and 67.9% respectively. So 36 and 68%. Not a great week against the spread. Still, I thought, I've been hovering around 500. I'm still having one of my better against the spread years anyway, so far. But definitely having to do a little more work now to get back to that 500 record. And now overall for the year, though, against the spread now, I am 92-97 with 5 pushes. And straight up now, I am 116-76 and the rare 2. 116-76 and 2 straight up. That equals out to 48.7% against the spread. And straight up, I'm officially firmly now across the 60% threshold. So I'm very happy about that. I do have 14, 15, 16, 5 more weeks to go. And this is the final week of the bye aspect of the season, which I'm excited about. So I will have 64 more games after this week to try to make an impact and get into that mid-60s range. It's possible, but it's going to have to be a lot of correct picks straight up to get to that range. Can I get into the low 60s, 62, 63? which I would take that with how crazy this year has been. I would gladly take that, but we will see about that. So, as I said, this is the last week of the bye portion, and we get a big 6-16 portion of the bye this week. The Atlanta Falcons, Chicago Bears, the Green Bay Packers, the Indianapolis Colts, the New Orleans Saints, and the Washington Commanders are all on byes this week. So if you have Marcus Mariota, Cordell Patterson, Drake London, Younghoe Koo, Justin Fields, David Montgomery, Cairo Santos, Cole Kmet, Aaron Rodgers, the Packers defense, Aaron Jones, Christian Watson, Jonathan Taylor, Matt Ryan, very still playing in the Colts defense, Chase McLaughlin, Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Taylor Heineke, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson, the Commanders defense, Joey Sly, Will Lutz, Jawan Johnson. If you have any of those players, and I know it could be, if you have any of those players in your fantasy teams, bench them because they will not be playing this week. But fortunately for all fantasy owners, this is the end of the bye portion of the season. Starting from week 15 to the end of the season, everybody will be playing the last 4 weeks of the year fully. So, 64 more games after this point. It's exciting. So, alright, so let me get into my picks for this week. So this Thursday, when the 5-7 Las Vegas Raiders travel to Los Angeles to take on the 3-9 Los Angeles Rams. The Las Vegas Raiders are 5.5 point favorites in this game. Give me the Las Vegas Raiders here, minus 5.5, and Las Vegas Raiders straight up. And on Sunday, when the 7-5 New York Jets travel to Buffalo to take on the 9-3 Buffalo Bills, the Buffalo Bills are 9.5 point favorites in this game. Give me the New York Jets here plus 9.5 to cover the spread, but I'm going to take Buffalo here straight up. Then the next game, when the 5-7 Cleveland Browns travel to Cincinnati to take on the 8-4 Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals are 5 point favorites in this game. Just as I did with the last pick, give me the Cleveland Browns here plus 5 to cover, but I'm going to take Cincinnati here straight up. Then the next game, one of the most lopsided games of the week, when the 1-10-1 Houston Texans, who are officially eliminated and on track to get the number 1 pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, travel to Dallas to their in-state game against the 9-3 Dallas Cowboys. This is the biggest spread, I believe, combined with Miami. I think Miami's might have been a little bit lower. This is a 17-point spread. The Dallas Cowboys are 17-point favorites in this game. Dallas has been too inconsistent for me. They can have their explosions, and they've had one of their best games against the Vikings. And I know the Cowboys could easily clobber this Texan team by a 17-point margin, but that is just way too many points. And I think the Texans, they've shown you enough that they can have a little bit of fight, or if the Cowboys cream them in the first half, like the Dolphins did 2 weeks ago, they could just put Cooper Rush into the backups, and they might be able to move the ball or get a field goal, but the Texans might be able to move the ball against the Cowboys backups. So with that being said, I'm going to take the Dallas Cowboys here to win straight up. Obviously, that's one of my, I would say, like for a lock of the week, that's my lock of the week straight up. I honestly think going against Houston for the most part should be everybody's straight up lock of the week. But I'm going to take Houston here plus 17 because I just think the Texans, in a weird way, can hang around, or if the Cowboys just cream them enough, they'll put the backups in, and the backups I just think will make enough movement. So we'll see. That's why I like Dallas here straight up at Houston plus 17. The next game, when the 10-2 Minnesota Vikings travel to Detroit to take on the 5-7 Detroit Lions, the Minnesota Vikings are 1 point favorites in this game. That's a very small number. I like that kind of number, and I'm going to take Minnesota here -1, and Minnesota is straight up. Then the next game, when the 4-8 Jacksonville Jaguars travel to Tennessee to take on the 7-5 Tennessee Titans, the Tennessee Titans are 3.5 point favorites in this game. Give me the Tennessee Titans here -3.5, and the Tennessee Titans straight up. Then the next game, when the 11-1 Philadelphia Eagles travel to New York to take on the 7-4-1 New York Giants, the Philadelphia Eagles are 6.5 point favorites in this game. Give me Philadelphia here -6.5, and Philadelphia is straight up. Then the next game, when the 8-4 Baltimore Ravens travel to Pittsburgh to take on the 5-7 Baltimore, or when the 8-4 Baltimore Ravens travel to Pittsburgh to take on the 5-7 Pittsburgh Steelers, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 1.5 point favorites in this game. This is going to be my only outright upset of the week. I am going to take the Baltimore Ravens here +1.5, and the Baltimore Ravens straight up to win this game. And I will have a lot to say about that game when I talk about all of them. But once again, I have Baltimore here +1.5, and Baltimore straight up. Then the next game, when the 9-3 Kansas City Chiefs travel to Denver to take on the 3-9 Denver Broncos, the Kansas City Chiefs are 9 point favorites in this game. Give me Kansas City here, -9, and Kansas City, straight up. Then the next game, when the 5-7 or 6-6 Tampa Bay Buccaneers travel to San Francisco to take on the 8-4 San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me San Francisco here with the Purdy boy. That's what I'm going to be calling Mr. Irrelevant of this past year's draft, Brock Purdy, the Purdy boy. Give me the Purdy boy, Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers here, -3 and San Francisco straight up. Then the next game, when the 4-8 Carolina Panthers travel to Seattle to take on the 8-4 or 7-5 Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks here are 5-point favorites in this game. Give me Seattle here -5, and give me Seattle straight up. And then in the Sunday night game, when the 8-4 Miami Dolphins travel to Los Angeles to take on the 6-6 Los Angeles Chargers, the Miami Dolphins are 3-point favorites in this game, giving the Miami Dolphins here -3, and the Miami Dolphins straight up. And then finally, in the Monday night game, when the 6-6 New England Patriots travel to Arizona to take on the 4-8 Arizona Cardinals, the New England Patriots are 1-point favorites in this game. This is a real awkward 50-50 type game. Give me New England here -1, and New England straight up. Alright, it's time for my thoughts on each game. The Las Vegas Raiders over the Los Angeles Rams. Look, I will be the first person to tell everybody I am not a Josh McDaniels fan by any stretch. I think the guy's a slime ball. I think the guy's, real shady. Not a great human being. But, over the last 3 weeks, he has done a very good job with this Raiders team. 2 overtime victories, and a big divisional victory over the Los Angeles Chargers to avenge what happened in week 1 of this season. So, good for the Raiders. First time since McDaniels' 6-0 run that he's won 3 straight games. So, I had to give him some credit there. Josh Jacobs has been on a running tear. Like, he is now leading the league in rushing at 1,303 yards in a contract year. I think he's had about 3 or 4 straight games of over 100 yards. He's been incredibly consistent, incredibly dominant, and he's literally carrying them to victories. Also, the one nice thing, Chandler Jones, after his 11-week, hibernation period, finally woke up. And after having half a sack entering the game, he had 3 sacks on the Chargers offensive line yesterday, which puts him at the 3.5 sacks for the year. But he finally woke up and had his best game as a Raider this whole year. He got to the Raiders and put up half a sack and did nothing really else. He had his best game as a Raider yesterday with 3 sacks that were huge drive killers and huge pusherbacks of the Chargers offense. So I'm going to give Chandler Jones credit there. And Davante Adams, he had a season-high receiving yards at, I believe, $177. And in 3 of the last 5 games, Davante Adams has been able to get 2 touchdowns in 3 of the last 5 games. And in those games, they have won 2 of those 3 in those games where he's got 2 touchdowns. So, it's, you know what? So, as much as I don't like to admit it, I'm going to give Josh McDaniels and that Raiders team a bit of credit. They are on a good 3-game roll. And let's be honest here, as sad as it is, maybe for me, the Raiders are the 10 seed. So, they are not out of this race by any means. They have a decent schedule coming up where they can get some wins. They could actually, Josh McDaniels, as sad as it is for me, he could actually probably keep his job and have a somewhat a successful year after the bad start he had. Who knew that losing to Jeff Saturday would be the high point of Jeff Saturday's career and maybe the low point of McDaniels, and both teams' directions are going in the exact opposite way since that moment. But I digress. But, that's, the big moment there. But the reason why I'm taking the Raiders as well is just this Rams team is just beat up and shot to you-know-what. The Rams, Matthew Stafford has a spinal neck contusion. He got put on the IR. He's out for the next 3 games at least. He's probably out for the season. Cooper Kupp, same thing. He had an ankle injury. He was out 6 to 8 weeks. There's no point in bringing him back. Aaron Donald has a high ankle sprain. If he was out Sunday, he's probably not going to play this game. The Rams have had 6 straight losses, which is, for McVay, I didn't think he would be able to field a team that badly that would have that many losses. That's Jeff Fisher-esque territory. But yeah, this is the worst record by a defending Super Bowl champion in NFL history since the Super Bowl. So, and the sad part is for the Rams, they don't have this pick. The Lions have this pick from the Jared Goff trade, and they probably are going to have a top 3 pick with a Lion team that's kind of going on the rise a bit. They're starting to, restore the roar a bit, in Detroit that way. I do want to give Cam Akers a bit of credit. He's had an up and down year, obviously, with the questions of his work ethic, the benching, the attempted trading, and all that. He finally did have a game where he had 2 rushing touchdowns. And I'm going to give Bobby Wagner credit for a phenomenal interception on Geno Smith. one of his former teammates. And I know the Rams have won 4 of the last 5 against the Raiders overall, both as the Los Angeles Rams and the St. Louis Rams. But when you just look at this game, the Raiders, they're just, playing a bit better. They have more talent around them. And I do want to give McDaniels credit. These are 3 straight wins without Hunter Renfrow or Darren Waller on the team. So, And I just think, again, the Raiders, the Rams can't really run the ball. I think the Raiders defense can do enough. I think Wolford showed some promise. Look, he made some big runs. He made a few nice throws to Ben Skoranek. Higbee really didn't do anything again. And I think, Wolford actually is the better quarterback than Perkins. So I think he can compete, but give me the Raiders here. More talented, more consistent running game. The Rams can't run the ball a lick. And I just think, again, Carr and talent just overwhelm what the Rams have right now. So that's why I like the Las Vegas Raiders here, -5.5, and the Las Vegas Raiders straight up. The next game, the Buffalo Bills over the New York Jets. Look, Stephon Diggs, 1,202 yards this year and 10 touchdowns, having himself another phenomenal year. They also, for the first time since 1992 to 1994, they have now won 3 straight road games in New England. Josh Allen threw about 233 and 2 touchdowns. He had a very nice, efficient game. He did have that big fumble, which was a problem. But again, the running attack has been able to get more consistent from Singletary, from Hines, and Cook. So they have been able to generate more of a rushing attack. The Bills have a top 10 offense and defense. And look, I think the Bills are going to be motivated. Josh Allen, the last time he played the Jets a few weeks ago, did horribly. He did horribly. He did not throw a touchdown in the last game. He ran for 2 and had about 80 yards rushing, which was not great. And look, the Jets, in a weird way, the biggest difference was the red zone efficiency for New York and the turnovers. The New York Jets had 2 huge turnovers by Mike White, one early in the game, and then the other interception to Cam Bynum, or it was Cam Bynum and Harrison Smith. Both of them had the picks. I forget which one had the one in the beginning and which one had it at the end. I think Cam Bynum got the game winning interception. And that's what killed them, because they had over 200 more yards of the Vikings and had the ball for 3 extra minutes. So the Jets also had 6 red zone opportunities and only could give 1 touchdown in those 6 opportunities. Greg Zuerlein had himself a day. He also had his longest field goal since Week 9 of the 2015 season with a 60-yard field goal. By the way, that is his 3rd 60-yard field goal of his career, so not bad for a journeyman at this point. Also for the Jets, this is the first time of them scoring over 17 points, and they lost the game. So, so that kind of shows that there. And it's one of those things to where, look, I think the Jets, is Mike White the guy? Sure. I think Mike White, he made a throw to Corey Davis that if Zach Wilson made that throw on 4th down, that would have been an interception or a really bad incompletion that, Zach, would not even be able to hit right on the button. And also, Braxton Berrios did drop, let's be honest, the game-winning touchdown in that game. So, so to me, though, I look at this game and go, the Bills, are a bit more motivated. They're getting a bit healthier. The secondary's a bit healthier. They're running the ball better. The Jets' offensive weapons, they're not bad. And Mike White does a good job. But to be fair, though, Mike White threw 4 interceptions the last time he played the Bills, to be fair, too. I don't think he's going to be that bad, but I don't think he's going to be that great to where, he's played against the Vikings and Bears where you're like, well, okay, he's done well. But those couple turnovers with the Bills' offense, especially in that environment, at home, and you're motivated, that could turn into, more scores than just having, game-sealing opportunities. So, should be an interesting game. I think 9.5 is way too much for how the Jets team has been playing all year. I didn't know how this Bills team is playing. So, but at the end of the day, the Bills are at home. The last couple times that they played the Jets under Saleh, with Mike and Zach, haven't been great. And this Bills team is motivated to just prove that Jet game was a fluke. So, I think they do, but I think the Jets hold on with their defense and White plays well enough, and not nearly as bad enough as he did the other time, that the Bills get the victory, but the Jets cover the 9.5. So that's why I like Buffalo here straight up, but the New York Jets plus 9.5. The next game, the Cincinnati Bengals over the Cleveland Browns. This is one to me to where, look, Joe Burrow and the Bengals are fantastic against the Chiefs. Like I said, 3-0. Now Joe Burrow's career against Patrick Mahomes. He had a very nice drives. He had another rushing touchdown. And if you take out If you take out the Pittsburgh games, he has, I believe, 24 total touchdowns and only 1 interception throughout the season if you take out the Pittsburgh game, because he has 7 turnovers in both Pittsburgh games, which is stunning. But if you take those out, I think he has like 23 total touchdowns and only 1 interception this year. And I guess with the other games, he's had like 3 turnovers for the rest of the year in every other game that he's played. So he's been sensational. And after what's happened this week, I probably put Joe Burrow third in the MVP race behind Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, even though Joe Burrow beat him. I'm going to give Samaje Perine some credit. He had his third career 100-yard rushing day because Joe Mixon was still in the protocol, which is big. And, you know, look, I look at the Bengals and go, this is a good squad. But the funny thing is, okay, everybody loves to brag about Joe Burrow going up against the Chiefs, how he's never lost to him. Well, you know who's never lost to Joe Burrow? The Cleveland Browns. He's had 4 games over the last 2 years. Or he's had 4 shots over the last 3 years to play the Cleveland Browns. Has not beaten them. And that's including this year. And I know Jamar wasn't there. But still, and maybe that's the big difference. Jamar will be there. But to be fair, though, Jamar was there the other time, too, last year. And he lost those 2 as well. I'm just saying that Joe Burrow, as great as he is, he might have the Chiefs number. But the Browns have Joe Burrow's number. So, so I think that'll be a very interesting argument, especially if they lose again. If he gets swept by the Browns in 2 consecutive years, how weird is that? How he can have the number of Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, the perennial AFC, best team, but the meddling Brownies who have been up and down all year, or every year, he can't beat them. It's just, who knows? But, and look, I watched that Cleveland-Houston game. Houston was just an absolute train wreck. The Browns scored 3 non-offensive touchdowns. They had the 76-yard punt return by Donovan Peoples-Jones. They had the pick 6, the 4-yard pick 6 by Denzel Ward, and an 11-yard pick 6 from the other defensive back. If somebody can tell his name, I can't think of it on the top of my head. But they scored 3 non-offensive touchdowns, and the Browns caused 4 turnovers, which for their defense was the most they had caused all year. So that was very nice. I was concerned about Deshaun Watson. He only threw for 131 yards and interception. I know he hadn't played a game in 700 days, but come on now. You're playing the gosh darn Houston Texans, the seller of the pit. Like, you're playing your former team, and you can't even put up an offensive touchdown? You can't even lead the offense to a touchdown? Really? Like, I'm not saying that he had to go, 305 TDs or 4 TDs and a pick, or... No, but, like, I would have thought 250? 2 TDs? Like, I thought he could have at least done that against the Houston Texans. Like, but I digress. So, again, but I think that performance really kind of shifted my momentum to the Bengals, because the Bengals are a much better team than the Texans. So I definitely think Cincinnati will put up a much better fight, and I don't know what Cleveland's defense, as decent as their pieces are. I don't know if Deshaun, I'll trust Joe Burrow going against that defense with the confidence they have with Jamar back than I will the Browns offense with what limited receivers they have outside of Amari Cooper. And really, Amari Cooper really didn't do that much yesterday. So, I am going to give the Browns their credit, though. Like I said, Joe Burrow's never beaten them. So, I'll give the Browns the 5 points. And, if that happens again, that's 0-5 for the 5 points. So, very fitting there. But I'm going to take the Bengals. I think Joe Mixon should be able to get back. I think the Bengals, they have the momentum that out of all the teams in the AFC that you don't want to play, that are not a division winner, just the one team outside of maybe Kansas City you don't want to play, and even the Chiefs themselves, it's Cincinnati Bengals by far. Just of how good they've been, how consistent they've been, and the expectation I have for them moving forward after this game. And I will say this, with everything that happened to the Ravens of injuries, I do think the Bengals will be the winners of the AFC North at the end there. So, we will see. So that's why I like Cincinnati here to win straight up, but the Cleveland Browns +5. The next game, and let me turn on this light here to give a little bit of, there you go, a little bit of light there. I know that'll help. But sorry for the glare. The next game, the Dallas Cowboys over the Houston Texans. This one is pretty self-explanatory. When you look at this game between the Cowboys and the Texans, it's pretty self-explanatory due to the fact that the Cowboys are going to be, they're the second best team in the NFC, in my opinion. And it's something to where Dallas has the 2 highest scoring points offensively this year. And, they put up 49 against Chicago, put up 53 against the Colts. They've caused the second most turnovers caused this year, and they have the most fumbles caused by any defense this year in Dallas, and they're playing Houston. This is just, there's not a lot that you have to explain here. Dallas is just clearly the better team in all facets. You could probably put Cooper Rush and the backups in, and I think Cooper Rush and him could win the game easily. Take Dak, Zeke, Pollard, take every starter out, maybe besides a couple of linemen, and they could easily kick the tar out of the Houston Texans. And Kyle Allen, look, he's not great. He's at 406 total yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 turnovers. Baker Mayfield got released from the Panthers today, and if anybody did not know already. So I definitely think the Houston Texans should make a waiver claim for Baker Mayfield, because I definitely think that he will have deserved that opportunity. And I think that, he'll be better than Davis and Kyle at this point. But yeah, I just think the Texans, they're just an absolute dumpster fire. Dameon Pierce, who was having a good run to the beginning of the year, he's probably not going to get the Offensive Rookie of the Year due to the lack of success the Texans have. But, I do believe that the Dallas Cowboys just whip up on the Texans. But again, it was a 17-point spread, and I just don't have the confidence. I think the Texans, it'll be kind of like what happened with Miami. I think the Cowboys whip through them and through 3 quarters, and maybe in the 4th quarter in garbage time, they get 2 garbage time touchdowns, which basically save the season, or save the spread. So that's why I like Dallas here straight up at Houston plus 17. The next game, the Minnesota Vikings over the Detroit Lions. This is a game to where I am taking the Minnesota Vikings here based off the fact that the Vikings just keep getting these close games. They got another 1-score win, so they're still undefeated in 1-score games. Eric Kendricks had a phenomenal day, 14 combined tackles. And when you look at Justin Jefferson, one of the top 3 leaders in receiving yards, he has the career 3-year best for receiving yards at 1,277, and he has 6 touchdowns after catching another one yesterday. But I do want to say, one problem that you can get on the Vikings, they're very much the opposite of some of their defenses. You can definitely pass on the Minnesota Vikings. They give up the most passing yards per game, or they give up the most passing yards this year by a defense. Which is very interesting because they're playing the Detroit Lions, who have the 2nd most total offensive yards in the league this year. Which is, kind of a weird thing to think about. And I will say this, I can see why this is such a close game due to the fact of Detroit being at home. Okay? Jared Goff has, he had a pretty good game. He outplayed the prince that was promised, Trevor Lawrence. But it's weird because Jared Goff on the road, he's 2-11-1 on the road all time as a Lion. But at home, he's around a 500 quarterback. He's 6-9. He tends to play better. That was the most points the Jags defense had given up on defense all year with 40. And look, you're playing one of the better, scoring touchdown running backs in the league. In Jamal Williams, he has 14 rushing touchdowns this year, which leads the league. And this is gonna be a crazy number. But over the next 5 games, Jamal Williams needs 3 rushing touchdowns, and if he gets that, he breaks Barry Sanders' single-season rushing touchdown number at 16 touchdowns, at 17. That's crazy to me that he has that record in sight, because you would never think Jamal Williams, who's not a bad running back, but he was the backup of the Packers, and he gets just thrown into the Lions deal, and look at him producing as much as he is. And I want to give the Lions defensive credit. In 3 of their last 5 games, they've held their opponents to under 20 points. So, but at the end of the day, and look, but the Vikings are going to have the motivation of what happened last year. Dan Campbell's first victory was right around this time, a little bit earlier. Right around this time last year, at home, Jared Goff throws that touchdown to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yeah, I think it's Amon-Ra. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown caught the game-winning touchdown that gave Dan Campbell his first victory. It was against Cam Dantzler. That was such a, monumental moment because the Lions have been on this massive losing streak all year, but it didn't matter. And, but I think a lot of those Vikings that were there, they remember that. They remember how sad it was, how pathetic it was, and what a great moment it was for Detroit that they weren't going to go 0-16, which everybody thought they were, including myself. So, I think that Vikings team is going to be pretty motivated to go into Detroit and, show them that was a fluke victory. And as great as you've been, you're still the Lions. And, as much as I, like Dan Campbell, I do say, he's got a schedule coming up. He needs 3 wins out of his last, he needs 3 wins out of his last 5. He can definitely get them. Jets are in there. Bears are in there, and Panthers. He can win those 3. And he already beat the Packers, so I'm just saying, he can win those 3 games to save his job, which I did not think was possible. But I think in this one, give me the Vikings, more consistent team. You get him in close spots. They're winning these type of games. And I think as great as Dan Campbell and the Lions have been competitive, they just don't get this one. So, that's all I like Minnesota here, -1, and Minnesota straight up. The next game, the Tennessee Titans over the Jacksonville Jaguars. That was an embarrassing performance by the Jags after they beat us. So I might be a little salty about it, but sure. The Jags, like I said before, they've given up the most points all year. To me, I look at it, here was the worst thing. So the prince that was promised that threw a party on the Ravens, by far, he threw for 179 yards against the 5th worst pass defense. That was with Christian Kirk. That was with Evan Ingram. That was with Marvin Jones. And that was with Zay Jones, who had a career-high receptions and receiving yards the other week. And against the 27th ranked pass defense, the Mr. Sunshine, the prince that was promised, that bust of a pick, throws for 179 yards. That's one thing I learned, though. Okay, maybe besides Houston, I'm not picking the Jags this year again. That's incredibly sad. Because, losing to the Lions against the Jags, I should have thought about that. And that's the one pick I regret out of the whole week. But, however, losing by 26, that's different. Just getting absolutely steamrolled by the Lions, that shouldn't have happened for that Jags team. That should have been, much more competitive. And look, they are playing the Titans, that again, the Titans are a 7-5 football team, but they're showing you, like they are every year, that they will beat every mediocre team you can think of and play well against the above-average teams to away. But if they play, they play the 2 number 1 seeds this year, and they have lost those games by a combined 76-17. That is pathetic, and that is absolutely dreadful. And shout out to Keith Bailey and all Titans fans, also Sports Fan Entertainment. He's in my description, but if you want to check him out, he does great predictions. But that is why the Tennessee Titans will never be taken seriously. They have the 6th lowest ranked offense in terms of points, and they have gained the 3rd fewest yards total offense. A.J. Brown had himself a day against that bad corner from the Titans. It wasn't Farley because he has a neck, but his backup. Yeah, that was really bad. And again, it's just something where, look, if they can limit Henry, that's fine. But the Titans have won 5 straight games. Derrick Henry's had a pretty great career against the Jaguars whenever he plays them. The Jags defense coming off a reeling loss that way. I think the Titans, again, it's not going to be pretty. But I just trust the Titans enough. This Titans team, when they play their division, they usually play pretty well inside their division. And I guess against the Jags, I trust the Titans. They'll be able to make some plays. Derrick Henry should be able to make some big runs. The defense should be able to get after Trevor Lawrence. Hopefully his legs are okay after that hit from Johnson that, had him miss the end of the half. But, this is one of those things that, again, the Jags, could they be competitive? Sure, they've had their moments. And, you could argue, again, the Jags have been more entertaining and explosive than the Titans. But when it just comes down to it, the Titans just have been more consistent, and I trust what the Titans have. And the inconsistency of Jacksonville is the biggest reason why I'm not going with them. So, again, it'll be an interesting game, but I think after you lose by 26 to the Lions, I have to take the Titans on the line against the spread in that way. So, that's what I like. Tennessee are -3.5 and Tennessee straight up. The next game, the Philadelphia Eagles over the New York Giants. This is fairly easy. Like, the Philadelphia Eagles are the best team in the National Football League. They had 6 sacks on the Tennessee Titans the other day. Jalen Hurts now has 29 total touchdowns to only 5 turnovers. In retrospect, Patrick Mahomes has 29 touchdowns himself, but he has 8 turnovers for the year. Also, if you just go off of TD interception ratio, it's 29-8 and 20-3 for Jalen. They have the highest point differential in the league, and their second half defense has basically been shutting down teams to limited offense in the second half. So they're very much what they were the opposite of, where the offensive end, the defensive end's been phenomenal in the second half. They have limited scoring and shut it down after, the first half. They haven't been able to score more, so I haven't really been able to poke fun at the Eagles for that. And they limited Derrick Henry very well. But, they were actually even able to put their backups in, which I thought was more impressive against the Titans, because at least when the Dolphins did that against the Texans are the worst team in the league. But the Titans, that's a 7-5 football team. That's the AFC South leading team. That's the 4th seed right now in the East. And they just felt after, 3 quarters, yeah, we can put Gardner and the backups in. It's whatever, it's fine. And they did pretty well. And the Titans gave up too. They put Malik and everybody in there. So, when you look at this, look at this game, and they're playing the Giants that are coming to their first tie since 1995. And, both teams were, it was an even game. And now it's like, and Graham Gano, we all thought, okay, Gano had made 7 straight 50-plus yard field goals. He had a 58-yarder. He was about 5 yards short. You really can't blame him. It happens. And it was 58. So, how much of a leg can you have? But it's amazing, though, because, fun fact here, next week, they flexed the Giants-Washington game to Sunday Night Football next week. So that's the Sunday night game next week. So, again, it's a great story, but it would be so hilarious if the Giants and Commanders in both their games tied. Like that would be like the never-ending tie. Also, it'd just be really bizarre that you have 2 games that just ended the same way. And what does that mean? Is that just an additional win, or usually you have 1 tie that's half a game? 2, if it ties half a game, 2 should be a full game then. So, but yeah. So, also, when you look at the Giants, it's the fewest fumbles lost, and the Giants, have had a good run. But this last 3-game stretch, starting with the Lions, just hasn't been great. They got thoroughly beaten by the Lions. The Cowboys played... It was a competitive game, but the Cowboys were clearly the better team for most of it. And to tie the Commanders in the situation they were in, coming off the bye, or coming off a mini bye, not great. But again, the Eagles just been clearly the better team. The Eagles have clearly had the Giants number. That's always a fun thing with this rivalry. The Giants will always say, well, hey, we have the 4 championships. Yeah, but the Eagles will always continue to say, wait, we at least beat you more often than not. And I just think, again, the Giants, they're having a good year, but the Eagles are, be destined to probably at least get to the championship game at the very least. If not the big one with everything that happened. But I'm going to take the Eagles here fairly easy. And again, they keep giving me 6.5, 2 weeks in a row. Got the win, so why not for a 3rd straight time? So that's why I like Philadelphia here, minus 6.5, and Philadelphia straight up. The next game, the Baltimore Ravens over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Man, Lamar Jackson and that Ravens offense has been downright dreadful. That was absolutely pathetic. He did sprain his knee, and he is probably going to be out this week. They said that it was going to be now week to week instead of day to day or days to weeks. So that will probably mean Tyler Huntley will get his 5th career start, and Brett Hundley, the former Packers and Colts quarterback, has been signed to our active roster to back up Tyler Huntley this week. And I am kind of concerned for the Ravens offense, though. That is 23 points scored in their last 2 home games. That's, 11.5 per game at home? Ugh, not great. And even though I do want to give the defense credit, in 6 of the last 7 games, even though the one we gave up more than 24 was against Jacksonville, we lost by a point. We've allowed 24 or fewer points in 6 of the last 7 games, and we held the Broncos to 9, and we held the Panthers to 3. In our last 2 home games, we've averaged 6 points a game. And we needed all that defense to carry our very inept and sad offense along those last 2 home games. And I will continue to say this. Justin Tucker is still the best Raven on the team. He scored, most of the points, and he just seems to be the most reliable person we can have in those moments. And look, they're playing, and we are playing a Pittsburgh team right now. That, let's just be honest, when you do Baltimore Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh or Baltimore, it's it's a crapshoot either way. Screw the records, throw the records out the window. You know, so it's going to be a close game either way. And, you know, you have a 1.5 point spread at that point. But look, I do want to say, Pittsburgh, they're on a bit of a roll. They've had no turnovers in the last 4 games. You know, which up to that 3-1 record. TJ Watt, in 4 of those 5 games he's been playing, he's been back. The Steelers defense has held opponents to 20 points or fewer in 4 of those 5 games. And, you know, it's a 3-point game a lot of the time. And you can make the argument, Kenny Pickett is a better quarterback than Tyler Huntley is at this point. That's true. And that probably is true. But I just think with the Ravens, like, we're finding ways to win. And I think, you know, Huntley's gone up against Pittsburgh. Huntley's seen Pittsburgh in moments. You know, he's had those games. He's seen Lamar play. He knows what Pittsburgh is capable of. He played them last year in that awkward game where TJ broke the sack record. So he's played Pittsburgh's defense. And his defense has most of its talent, and they've lost some of the talent. Pickett's never played ours. And look, on our losses, Pickett might be able to shred our defense. Because Pittsburgh definitely has the better running back, and they have definitely the better receiving core, besides Mark Andrews, in every way. So I will give him that. But I just think Kenny Pickett, we can get enough pressure on him with that offensive line as banged up as it is. And I think Huntley can make enough runs and throws of his arm against that weak Pittsburgh secondary outside of the safeties that I believe Baltimore can win this game and get redemption for what happened in the game at the end of last year in that way. So it's going to be an ugly game. It's going to be Ravens-Steelers. It's going to be fun. Going to be gritty. Going to be tough. But give me the Ravens here, just having a little bit more talent, a little bit more experience, and I just think we are still playing for something, and Pittsburgh's still trying to, but I think Baltimore just pulls it out with their experience, their coaching, and their grit. Though I would say the Ravens, you know, in their first 11 games, they had a double-digit lead in all those games. Every other team that had 11 games like that to start a year went 7-4, or they went 11-0. We're 7-4 through those games. So thankfully that streak ended. But hey, 8-4, meh, it's enough. So that's like Baltimore here plus 1.5, and Baltimore straight up. The next game, the Kansas City Chiefs over the Denver Broncos. This is one to where Kansas City, they usually don't lose back-to-back games often. Mahomes has never lost a road divisional game. Russ has another 4-game losing streak on his hands. And the sad thing is the Denver defense continues to show how dominant it is. The Denver defense through 12 games this year has given up 16 total touchdowns, 15 in regulation. That is just downright amazing. And Brandon McManus has 48%. He has 80 points out of the 166 the Broncos offense have been able to score all year. So that means if you take that 86 points that Russell Wilson and them have been able to score, that's 7 points a game outside of the kicker. But with that defense, if they put up like that 18-point stat, if they're putting up like 18 points a game, they're at least a 10-2 football team. Yeah, the offense might not be great, but if that was the conversation, we would look at this Denver defense and say, this is one of the greatest defenses of recent history. Seriously. Like, if you are carrying an offense that ineptly to a 10-2 record, if you just average that many points, you know, or you take the second, where it was like the second worst offense in the league, you take that points and put that with that Denver defense, they win the game. They win those games, and they are in a good position to at least be a playoff team, if, you know, not, you know, compete for the division. They'd be leading the division. It says, you know, they could be 10-2 instead of 3-9. You know, so that's the thing. It's like, look, if the Denver defense play well, sure, but the Niners defense was number one, and it's been number one basically all year. They played Kansas City, they gave up 47. Denver's defense has been great pretty much all year against everybody, but against Kansas City, I just think Mahomes and them are just going to roll through them like a knife through butter, put up a lot of good points. You know, it's not going to be a fun game. They had to flex this game out of prime time, obviously, because everybody thought Denver was going to be much better. And I think it's just going to be an absolute rear end kicking, just like in Mahomes' first game as a pro back in 2017. So that's all I Kansas City here, -9, and Kansas City straight up. The next game, San Francisco over Tampa Bay. This is one to where I'm taking San Francisco, even with Brock Purdy, because Jimmy Garoppolo did break his foot, like I said earlier. He is now out for the rest of the year. Nick Bosa now leads the league in sacks at 14.5. The Niners defense is number 1 in points and number 1 in yards. They also have the best running defense in the league, which is a problem because that means that they are playing the worst rushing offense in the league in Tampa Bay. And Brock Purdy did not do bad. Brock Purdy threw for 210 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick as Mr. Irrelevant, coming out of Iowa State of the draft this year. Christian McCaffrey continuing to show his impact in a very good way. He is 146 scrimmage yards and a touchdown yesterday when they needed him to. I thought that, Tyler Kroft made a nice play. Kittle made a few good plays. They had this guy named James or something Mason. He had a couple nice big runs. And I still think, look, the Niners, even with their third-string quarterback being Mr. Irrelevant, I still think they're the 4th best team in the conference. And I think the Niners can still win the division with Brock Purdy playing the football that, Jimmy or Trey was expecting. And I will be the first person to say this. If Brock Purdy, the Purdy boy, can play well enough, I'm not so sure I'm giving Trey Lance that job after when Jimmy's not there next year. I'd let Brock Purdy, if he was able to win enough games, compete with Trey Lance to see if he could be the quarterback of the Niners moving forward. And I know the Tom Brady thing's out in the window too, and that can be a fair point. But I definitely think if Tom Brady and Brock Purdy do enough in these next 2, I would keep Brock Purdy, bring in Tom Brady, let Brock Purdy be the backup for a year or however long, and I would try to trade Trey Lance. Because I think Brock Purdy showed more in one game than I've seen Trey Lance in 4. So that's all I'm going to say. So I'm going to bring that up. And it's kind of crazy that I'm taking the Niners to win, but you just look at this Bucs team and their offensive. They're getting Vita Vea and Hicks back tonight, so that's going to be really big for their defense. But I just think the Niners defense, they should be able to limit the Bucs offense by a lot. That offensive line's not going to have Tristan Wirfs now for the next 3 to 4 weeks due to an ankle injury. And I just think the Niners are going to be able to play. And I think Brock Purdy, going up against that Bucs secondary with as banged up as it is, with the weapons he has, I think he can outplay Tom Brady going up against that Niners defense. Brock's got a better matchup. Brock's got some more confidence. And I just think, again, the Niners, you saw him go up against the 5th overall pick in the 2020 draft and outplay him. So if he can do that, he definitely can play this version of Brady in this moment. That is absolutely hilarious. The GOAT of the sport could lose to the Mr. Irrelevant guy of the sport. And that just is such a unique dichotomy. And what a moment for Brock Purdy to get his first career win as a starter against Tom Brady. Which is kind of crazy to think about, but that's what I think will happen. So that's all like San Francisco here -3 and San Francisco straight up. Then next game, the Seattle Seahawks over the Carolina Panthers. Look, the Carolina Panthers are undefeated at home, but they have not run a road game under Steve Wilkes. Tyler Lockett is having a very good year with 836 yards and 7 touchdowns. And, the Kenneth Walker injury is big. Apparently he has a sprain or he jammed the bone inside of his ankle, which I thought was big. And it's one of those things where, look, Carolina, in their road games under Wilkes, they lost by 14 to the Rams. They lost by 21 to the Bengals. They lost by 10 to the Ravens. So they've lost by at least double digits in most of these road losses. The only one that they didn't was Atlanta, where they lost by 3 off that crazy sequence at the end. And I just think, again, the Seahawks, they're playing a bit better. Geno's leading the league in completion percentage. DK had a very good day against Jalen Ramsey. Cody Barton got a big pick. And I just think, again, with Sam getting another start, it's not going to be great. And Carolina, in their franchise history, they've only won one time in Seattle. And that was in 2015 when Cam beat them on that last play to Greg Olsen back in 2015. That's their only road win in this series against them. I just think this Panther team, that's not that team from 7 years ago. And boy, what a difference 7 years makes. But yeah, I think that the Seattle team has been clearly more effective. I think Geno outplays Sam. It's kind of a weird moment for Geno. Or kind of weird moment for Sam and Geno. Kind of awkward picks. Both former Jets guys. We've kind of taken for granted. But I think that the Seahawks win this one, even without Kenneth Walker being there. I think DJ Dallas and Homer can do enough for the run game. And I think that Seattle can move the ball against that very bad Panthers secondary. So that's why Seattle here -5 and Seattle straight up. Then the final 2 games, the Miami Dolphins over the Los Angeles Chargers. This is one to where, look, Tua had himself a very bad game. He had his career high in turnovers with 3. He had 2 interceptions and a fumble. Jalen Waddle getting hurt was big, but Tyreek Hill was still leading the league in receiving yards. And it's just weird where it's like, I think with the Chargers, look, Mike Williams was hurt and he couldn't play. and he's going to be questionable. If you take the second best receivers for the Chargers and Dolphins both out, you go Tyreek over Keenan. You would take the Dolphins running attack over the Chargers. Well, maybe not, but you take the Dolphins coaching staff. I would take Sanders over Dicker. I would take the Dolphins defense over the Chargers defense, especially their run defense, which would be big because Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson should be able to make some sort of impact, and they were able to just a couple games ago run for a good amount against the Browns defense, which was better than the Chargers run defense. And it just comes down to coaching. If you're going to give me Brandon Staley or Mike McDaniel, I'll take Mike McDaniel because Brandon Staley, once again, he's making these stupid and awkward, boneheaded decisions to go for a fourth down in spots. Like, again, the one great play where Justin Herbert threw that bomb to Keenan Allen, that was a great play. But he also went for it on 4th and 2 at the Las Vegas 18 when there was a 0-0 game. Take the field goal. Dicker, the kicker, hasn't missed all year. And I know it was a 7-point game, so you add that point to the end, they still would have lost by 4. But it just matters. They're getting points, especially against the Raiders. Like, if you're that desperate that you can't stop the Raiders offense, like, I know it's been great, but come on, like, to be fair, just 2 weeks ago, they were held to 16 against the Broncos, going into overtime. So, if you're that desperate, that shows how bad you are as a defensive coach. And he's the defensive-minded guy. He's the defensive coordinator for the Rams. And you're telling your defense, well, hey, we got to go for it here, or we just need to go for it with the points. I'm like, Staley, stop. It's bad. It's not good. Sean Payton needs to get there, and he needs to save that job. I'm going to feel bad for Staley in a way because, again, every coach deserves to have one bad year, and he did have a 9-win season last year. But, I'm going to take the Dolphins here. Better coaching, more talent, healthier team. And they're signing Eric Fisher, which is huge for them because Austin Jackson's not getting put on the IR. And I do think the Dolphins win this game just based off their better coaching and the more consistent talent. So that's all. Like Miami here, -3, Miami straight up. Also, the Chargers won't have that much of a home field advantage. They never do. So, and finally, the New England Patriots over the Arizona Cardinals. This is one to where I know the Cardinals have more talent, and I know the Cardinals, they have some better pieces, but I trust the Patriots defense enough, and I'm just going to trust Bill Belichick to outcoach Cliff Kingsbury. I would say this, that the Cardinals defense, if Mac Jones could put up, his career high in numbers against, the Vikings, I think he'd do basically the same against the Cardinals defense. I know the Cardinals, look, I think the Cardinals offensive line, they've had their moments, but I think Matt Judon and that defensive line, Uche, can get enough pressure on Kyler Murray to have him be frustrated. And again, it's the Arizona Cardinals at home. They have the second worst home record in the NFL, and they've only won one home game over the last 2 years. Actually, it was a great thing on the internet I saw. There was this kid that has been, a diehard Cardinal fan, and he's gone to every home game for the Cardinals except the one they won for the last 2 years. He's never seen them win a home game. Like, kudos to his father, for sending him out there. But boy, that is a tough thing to go to every Cardinal home game and just realize your team can't win at home. The Pats have won 5 of the last 7 against the Cardinals. And it's something to where, look, though I think Kyler's a better quarterback than Mac, he is. And Kyler definitely has the better offensive weapons across the board. But in this game, I'm going to take the better defense and the better coach, and that's Bill and the Pats defense. And look, the Pats and Cardinals, it came down to a missed field goal at the end last time from Catanzaro back in 2016, or Nick Folk 2016 when they were in Arizona. The last time they played, they won that game off a Nick Folk field goal when Cam beat them. And I just think it comes down to that kind of aspect again. I think Nick Folk in Arizona will have an opportunity to kick a game-winning field goal to give the Patriots another victory. I think, again, they will now play the Raiders. That's not the Sunday night game next week, but they will play the Raiders next weekend, or their next game. I do think the Raiders should be the favorite, but I do think the Pats, they do need this bit of momentum because getting to 8-6 before their last 3 against Buffalo, Miami, and Cincinnati, they need to have the most opportunity to say, hey, we could maybe get in and we can survive the 2 losses against Buffalo and Cincy. If they could beat Miami, which could happen, and at home, maybe that's the difference in the Pats getting into the playoffs and them not. So that's why I like New England here -1 and New England straight up. And that is it. So those are all my picks for this week. Please check out the NFL YouTube Prognosticators to see great people like Half Moon's Picks, Bridgewater's Finest, Fire and Brim Sports. You have Andrew Warren, the Blind Canadian Cat. All those guys and gals that make predictions. Sports Fan Entertainment, Philly Takeoff RB. If you like any Raiders stuff, I put Raiders Report by Mitchell Renz. You know, he's been entertaining for me watching the Raiders struggle. But yeah, check his channel out if you are a Raider fan. Also check out Chat Sports in general. They have a lot of great people out there that give out stuff. And that is it. So good luck to all players, teams, coaches, fantasy players, and fellow prognosticators. I know the playoffs are coming soon for fantasy, so that's exciting. But that is it. So until next week, this is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, signing off. Until next time, everyone, so long.